The topic of the panel, if we didn't go to the schedule, is instilling the impact of instilling social responsibility and leadership in youth. So we have two parents, two youngsters, and a fabulous another. Laura, how do I build you? You are somebody who has seen both sides of the aisle, have great experience in coaching, a lot of corporate executives, and you have seen, both sides of the equation. So that's where you're going to help us opine, between the parents and the kids. So the idea is that, our parents are very driven, very ambitious, and they want to raise the kids academically and professionally very successful. And it's a very, very challenging and daunting task. On the other side are the youth, not as young as you guys, but they have gone through the pressure cooker environment, achieved their academic successes and doing very well professionally. So how do they feel growing up in this pressure environment, come out very successful? And having come out very successfully, how are they now trying to contribute back, being a socially responsible citizens? So the idea is let's all learn from each other so other parents and other kids can benefit from these lessons. Okay, so the panel is, next to me is Nitin Salunke, President and CEO of Supira Medical. And next to him is Abrar Rahim. He's a partner at Deccan Capital. And then we have Aakash Prasad, who's founder and CEO of Design Everest. And next to him is Laura C. Wells, founder and CEO of AwakeTeams. And certainly not the least, Gauri Naik, co-founder and CEO of Optra Health. So before I start the conversation, Nitin has two kids, raised them very, very successfully. Gauri has two daughters, again, who have gone to good schools. So one is still, just come out of high school. And Abrar went to UC Berkeley and to London School of Economics. And then Aakash went to UC Berkeley and has already been a serial entrepreneur, has done 3 companies. So my first question is to the parents, starting with Gauri. Being a very successful entrepreneur yourself, a very dedicated mom, what do you think are some of the traits that you try to instill in the kids to come out academically and professionally very successful?
First of all, thanks, Mateen, for making me a part of this great panel and also introducing me, very kindly. Thank you, so much for that. So first of all, what I feel is that the first thing what a parent would definitely need to, I won't use the word teach, but show to the kids is by leading by example. That's if you just start giving them lectures, preaching them, that's not a good way. You have to trust them, first of all. And this today's generation is very, very, intelligent themselves. They have seen the world, from the very young age. So they can filter out the things themselves very well. So as a parent, I think my job was little easier because my daughters could, if I showed them right things by doing them myself, they would definitely pick it up. So that become a very easier kind of a path for me as a parent. And of course, like all of our parents would agree with me that installing trust in them, like whatever they do, wherever they go, it's kind of like I am kind of very confident that I know my daughters will always choose a right path. That having installing that confidence in them, giving them the freedom, and installing the leadership values in them, if as a parent, if we are able to do these things, the other things, quote unquote, as they call it, raising the successful kid, those things follow automatically.
Thank you. Nitin, your perspective.
Yeah, of course, agree with what Gauri said. What I tell myself from the beginning is my biggest title is dad, not the CEO, not the president, not any other title I carry at work. And if you get that priority right, then you get the time allocation right. So being a dad, then my first priority is to giving time to my two daughters. And as Gauri mentioned, you lead by example. You don't have to lecture them; they just watch you. Especially, I'm a big believer that if you show them by example in the earlier part of their childhood, in elementary schools and middle school, that's when they absorb the most. That's when dad and mom, they are the heroes. Once they grow up and go in the teenager phase and high school and college, it's too late. I think by that time your parent responsibility is over. To me, the biggest time you spend with them in the earlier time. There, then the two primary traits to imbibe. One is the empathy. Once they start learning and living into someone else's shoes and understand the perspective from the other person's side, that's a big way to learn what others may feel, what you do to them. And then other aspect I paid more attention to is giving them those leadership skills. So the empathy and leadership skills, those were the two characteristics I paid particular attention to, especially during the elementary and the middle schools for my two daughters.
Thank you. And now to the two you before I go to Laura, is growing up with immigrant parents, very driven, very ambitious. So you felt the challenges. But the more importantly is, the challenge for you to assimilate into the mainstream culture as well, which to a large extent most parents don't relate to as much, especially immigrant parents. So wanted your perspective and your learnings on that particular aspect of growing up.
Sure. Yeah. Does this work? Okay. I think for me, I was born in India. My family's been here for over 21 years. Largely grew up here. Went to Gun High School. Went to Berkeley. So I'm both Indian, but I'm also very American. But I think the best thing my parents did for me was they gave me a lot of freedom. I had great people around me. I went to top school in Palo Alto, then UC Berkeley. I always had a lot of inspiration and role models and great people around me. But what my parents specifically did gave me a lot of freedom to explore, take risks, sometimes succeed, sometimes fail, sometimes get in trouble too. But having that intellectual curiosity and freedom and space to explore was probably the number one thing for me. And how that's manifested in my life is I have a lot of different interests. After college, my first company was in EdTech. My second was in HR enterprise software. My third company was in a digital platform for architects, engineers, and contractors in construction, completely different. Now, my next one is in health and wellness and a nonprofit. And having that freedom and ability to explore different things, I think that was the most valuable thing for me beyond any specific thing I learned.
Thank you so much. Abrar?
Well, I think it's actually, I'd really echo what your experience was, Aakash, because similar situation. I was born overseas and we moved here in 2000, and I think the primary thing that my parents allowed for was well, there's two things. Oh, the first was the freedom to operate and freedom to try new things. And the second one was the importance of hard work. I think that there's whatever it is that you're trying to do to get any kind of success in that, whether it's a small thing or a big thing, the chances that you're going to have to work relatively hard. And so I think to have that framework from the word go is really helpful. I think and that translates into like academic successes. It translates into like sports and things like that as well. And then that eventually then translates into the assimilation that you were talking about, which is that as a Muslim immigrant who moved here a couple months before September 11th, there was obviously on my part not the same understanding of what had happened, but then I also didn't fully understand what was going on around me, and so I think that getting successes in all of these other fields helped me make friends and help others to see that hey, this is not just like some immigrant kid from India. He's he's a good student. He has ideas about the world. and you know, he's here to try to do something.
Thank you. Laura, America's success in the last 100 years is not by chance. A lot of hard work has gone into it. There's a reason why people still want to flock to this country. So coming down and trying to distill it all the way down to good parenting. So growing up, you probably can relate to these kids and the parents, the kind of hard work, good morals, good values. Are there some parallels you can draw?
Yeah, thank you, Mateen, for inviting me here and for the being with these wonderful people and sharing with you all. I was so inspired what I saw by the end of the previous panel of young people. And really talking about being aware of how short our lifespan is and what, like, conscious of what do I want to do with it while I'm here. So I'm not quite answering your question, but I'll get there. Yeah, I think the success of America over the last 100 years is a double-edged sword. And the hard work has also often in this culture been translated to very individualistic and take care of yourself and make your way, and kind of the opposite of what the young people were talking about, community and volunteering and social skills and connection. And so there's no doubt about the success of America and how rapidly this country was built, and what a powerful force in the world it became. And I think now is a real period of reflection. What exactly is that influence in the world? And what is the cost of success? And have we maybe defined success too narrowly? Or in the great sort of, desperation is too strong a word, but in the need to build a country, right? And form new things, and the creativity and innovation and ingenuity of humans that requires really came forward, absolutely, and is still very forward, innovation in this country. And I think there's a darker side of that, for forgetting that, you know, maybe having moved here and lost community, and somehow that not being as fundamental and as baked in, that we're actually all in this together, and that even my success is not mine. I didn't do it by myself. I did it because I had great role models and people mentored and encouraged and brought out the talents they saw in me. So yeah, I really think it's this success is double-edged.
Thank you. Coming back to the panel, I was mentioning to Laura that this is still considered the land of opportunity for a major part of the world population. For most of the Asian parents who have come here as first generation, is to make, you know, a very good life here. It gives you a lot of opportunity of education, professionalism, entrepreneurship. You know, it's freedom to think and do what you want to. And once, as parents, we achieve those successes, we want our kids to do much better than us. What I want to draw from both the parents here is we also bring cultural baggage with us. The way we grew up in India, our challenges were different. Our parenting was very different. And we try to somehow, you know, replicate that in some, you know, to our kids, which doesn't relate much. The reason I'm asking is there are a lot of newer parents who have come in the last decade or so. And there's a big, you know, tussle every day, you know, since from middle school onwards. You know, every day there are schools, and then there are tuition classes, and then there are extracurricular activities. The kids have no time to breathe. So in your journeys, you know, in your learnings, you know, what would you advise that, you know, how much of our culture that we should keep with us so we can take that to our kids and moving forward, and what needs to be left behind that cannot be taken forward, so the kids can have a wholesome experience growing up, because this is their homeland. Nitin.
Yeah, one thing I used to tell my daughters that, look, you are a global citizens. You are not citizen of one country. And being a global citizen, you need to know more than just one country. And you are fortunate that you have a stronger start because you get to see two countries simultaneously. You get to see, of course, the country where you are living and the country where your parents came from. That being said, then, as Gauri mentioned, like her daughters, my daughter get to travel around the world at a quite early age. So they get to see the world. So that gives them that exposure that it doesn't have to be this or that. It should be this and that, right? And having that broader exposure, having that broader thinking, then they don't have to pick one or the other. They can have both sides and blend them together and even become stronger individual. And that personality development happens when you believe in yourself, who you are, rather than try to be someone else, right? And so with that kind of framework and mindset, if you show that from the beginning, then that leads to self-confidence. And once they are confident, then they can live in the both worlds.
Gauri?
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Nitin. Absorbing best things from both the cultures and taking rather best of both the worlds and being a global citizen. So those are the ideal things. Completely agree. But when sometimes achieving always the idealistic things is practically not feasible. As I agree with you, Mateen, we tell them that you have to be while some cultural things, you have to be Indian. But when you go out, I mean, specifically now coming to the specific examples, in the professional world, you have to be a global kind of a citizen. So it's easier said than done. It's not always, it brings different challenges to the kids. So from that perspective, I think it's it's really, really very challenging for the young kids to have that kind of a critical balance, because the line is very thin and the rope on which they are walking every day, it's very, very challenging. So how we can help them as a parent, that's what I've figured it out. And I like Nitin, like giving them the global exposure. Our job as a parent is to show them, this is this is this culture, there are some good things here, this is this culture, there are also some good things here, and vice versa. So our job as a parents is to show them and not enforce anything on them, but just point it out to them. And then they are mature enough to understand what to absorb from this culture and what to live there. For example, there are under the name of some customs and traditions, sometimes very ritualistic kind of a protocols come in the home, which are not really needed. The kids, today's kids, they don't need to do that. You have to wear this kind of outfit only, you have to do this kind of a religious protocol. Those things, it's like we can leave it to the kids. We should not be enforcing on them. But there are some values which are really good from some cultures, which we can suggest them that they can adopt, like the stability of the family. And all those cultures are very good in Southeast Asian countries. So that can be pointed out to them. But if you go and enforce anything on your kids, I don't think it's going to be a good idea. So to some extent, pointing out, telling them, showing them is a job of a parent, not enforcing anything.
So the youth here, so how much, the growing up time was Indian and how much was non-Indian for you? What were the couple challenges? And we can do this quickly. You don't have to think this hard.
Well, when my family moved here, I was in elementary school, late elementary school. So it was a progression, right? Initially, we were much more Indian, and now I feel kind of more American than Indian. But it's kind of been a spectrum and a transition over time. So I've seen, both kind of sides of the spectrum. But it was a gradual shift for sure.
Abrar?
So I think everyone here in the room will agree with me. The thing that will always stay Indian is the food. It's just far better. It's not even close. So that's and honestly, that's a big source of identity, right? It's you're eating the foods that are native to the place where if you didn't grow up there, then your parents did. But the thing that does change is thought and values, right? And not in terms of maybe necessarily cultural values because you're keeping it's a hybrid, but values about what is possible in terms of your professional opportunities. Because where we come from, it's quite limited and it's predetermined at a very early age. But here, there's second and third and fourth chances. So those are, I would say, the two, the things that stay the same and things that change.
So Laura, now that you've been hanging around Indians for a few months, how much of Indian do you relate yourself to?
Um, yeah, so I also have been involved with a primarily Indian community called Service Space here in Santa Clara, and it's very volunteer driven. And so my association is this sort of volunteering and this a greater awareness of the connectedness and maybe karma, this yeah, something about connectedness and a real warmth. That's my experience when I show up in spaces that are primarily Indian. I mean, I know, right, many people consider themselves American, even if it seems like they like Indian food or they look like they're Indian. But yeah, warmth and connectedness. And then it does seem to me, in the communities that I've been exposed to, just more natural to know we're connected and in a community.
So my next question again to you, Laura, is you will define success, I'm assuming, very differently than some of us on the stage. And you are an entrepreneur yourself. You live in Silicon Valley. So I don't know if you're really a misfit here or what, but I still would like the audience to know how would you define success? The reason I'm asking is, especially the Asian immigrant parents, we're very driven. We want our kids to succeed, especially become good engineers, good doctors, good lawyers, but success is a lot more than that. And it doesn't have to stick with STEM, So your take on how you think success should be seen.
Yeah, great question. Thank you. So for me at this stage, in different phases of life, I've defined that differently. And I've had quite a journey where I was in corporate America. I left and went to nonprofit. I've worked in different countries. And then I became a coach, and I now run a business that develops social and emotional skills in corporations. Like I've gone back, like I sort of went full circle and went back and decided, like I think it needs some help. But how I define success at this point is, how can I best contribute? Like, what is mine? What is mine to offer, and where and how do I best contribute? And that has sort of become an obsession. Or maybe it's because I'm a startup founder, and you get that kind of energy. But really, I've traveled a lot at this point. I've accumulated a lot of experience, learned a lot, and how is that best of use? Whatever stage we are. I mean, I just heard a very, very young person saying, life is short and be aware of what you're doing and how you're living, right? And so that for me is success, is
Very much understanding of that at such a young age, and having kind of wanting to contribute on that front is real success.
yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Laura. So, Aakash, now that you're really successful and made your parents very proud, having been a serial entrepreneur, before we come to the social responsibility, which we'll do it at the end, has success, I'm sure, definitely evolved. What was success for you when you were at UC Berkeley, and how do you contrast that with it now?
Yeah, so that definition has changed. So in high school, it was GPA and college admissions. In college, it was GPA and internships. But my first company was the number of users. For my second company was the amount of funding raised. For my third company, it was the revenue. And now my definition of success is I actually have a personal dashboard for my whole life, 360 degrees in Excel. Just like when you're running a business, you have a dashboard for sales, marketing, finance, product. I've got a dashboard for my health and wellness, for my family, for my relationships, for my finance, and for my different projects, for-profit, nonprofit that I'm working on. So it has gone from one or two metrics, like obsessing over revenue for 6 years, to now a very holistic understanding of my life. And I've tried to make that very comprehensive and holistic. So it's no longer one or two numbers. It's something that I feel is much more whole.
Abrar?
Um, so, I think I really stopped thinking about like things through a successful, non-successful framework. Um, Maybe like a couple of years ago. And it's not to say that it doesn't exist, of course. There are successful outcomes in life and there's not successful outcomes in life. But the thing that I realized that it actually just kind of got in the way of what I actually wanted to think about, which was one question. What is the most interesting, impactful thing I can work on, and am I doing that? Right? That to me, and I suppose if you want to go like a more metaphysical level, that became my definition of success, and it was really just that question. And so, outcomes are, and you guys are all entrepreneurs here. It's really difficult to guarantee outcomes in life. It's really just about the process. And so, success to me is executing well on whatever I think is impactful or important. And that's really how I've begun to approach kind of everything I do now.
Thank you. There's a great desire amongst parents that kids should follow in their footsteps, especially in the immigrant community, whether you are running hotels or fast food chains, or especially doctors or lawyers. And if they don't, then there's a little bit of, discontentment. But if you can't follow in my footsteps, then at least become better than me in some other professional field. There is also this understanding in the American education system that do not force your kids to become what they don't want to become, they can't become. Let them be what they want to be. It is a very, very double-edged sword. They can't be what they want to be. So success has to be still defined in certain parameters. To what extent do both of you agree? Gauri first.
So your question is, what should be their approach towards, like, I mean,
so what we do is we try to hope, not just hope, but actually push our kids to become like us. If they can't become like us, become better than us. But then the other side is the American education system. They say, don't force the kids. Etc. So that is also very kind of a losing end of the game.
Yeah.
You can't let kids be what they want to be. There has to be certain parameters where the success is, even if loosely defined, but it has to be defined.
Sure, I completely agree with you. There has to be some hand-holding with the kids for sure. And especially if you are, entrepreneurs, parents as entrepreneurs, and they have raised some organizations to some level, at least mezzanine level, first floor level, whatever, And then if you want, and of course, if the kid also wants to join you and take that company to the next level or whatever, that's perfectly fine. But there could be another scenario also. If the kids are not interested, the parents should never ever force them. They should absolutely give them the freedom to explore something more. So it can be as easy as that. But I completely agree with you, Mateen. Life can't be as simple as that. Like there are some definitive, indices with which we want our kids to be successful, and in order to help them. So I really feel that it's a very individualistic kind of a thing. For example, like I'll give you a direct example. I have two daughters. One of my daughters is very much interested in the business. She's at Columbia Business School, and she, whatever me and my husband we have built as a group of companies, she is definitely completely interested in joining us. In fact, it's we actually keep telling her, wait, hold on, you take some experience outside, and then you can join the family business. Like that's kind of her attitude. But my second kid, she wants to explore and start on her own. Like she's kind of like, no, it's my mom dad's company. I want to start something. I don't want to touch that. So that's kind of her approach. That is also fine. So that's kind of a attitude. I think, like, to me as a parent, I think that's fine. I mean, and I'm always there. I've told my other kid who wants to start something from scratch. I've told her Like, okay, you start, I mean, you will fail a couple of times, whatever. We are always there, but we won't interfere. So that's kind of a attitude. I think I have. Maybe right, maybe wrong. I don't know. Time will tell.
Nitin?
Yeah. No, when my first daughter was born, I heard this phrase from one of my colleagues. He said, "Look, Nitin, every child, every person, when he or she is born, they have their own shape. They come with their own shape. Don't try to change the shape just around the corners." And when I heard that, I said, "This is significant." And so, what I suggest, to my fellow parents, and I've spent a lot of time in mentoring, our next generation, is that instead of trying to make them like you, find out what they're passionate about. If you identify their passion and then set the tracks for that passion, then they will be more successful than you even ever imagine. So helping them first identify their passion. Secondly, as a parents, of course, we are there to guide them, mentor them always. But I also encourage find some other and additional mentors for them, because sometimes what you tell them at certain age will resonate. At certain other age may not resonate. So having another mentorship framework for them also helps them to identify what they are really like about. And having that additional mentorship framework other than parent also helps those kids to grow better. So having that kind of identification of passion and having additional source of mentorship, those are the framework. And I think we call success, but I think other way to look at that is to identify what is happiness. If you make them happy what they are doing and what they are working on, they're naturally going to over deliver. Versus if you force them to do certain things that we talked about, and if they are not happy, if they're not content, they may not give their best.
Thank you.
There's just one thought I wanted to add, which was that, and I totally agree with what you guys have said. The only thing I wanted to add was that what helped me like decide to do something or pick and then try to excel at it was this like deep sense of responsibility. It's like, well, okay, your parents have like taken a chance, they've uprooted their lives, they've come here. There could be a multitude of reasons, but a big reason is you. And so, and they were sure to like tell me about the responsibility. And so and I think that that's void of any specific career path. It just is a responsibility to do something at a generational level with whatever your parents have built for you. And I think that, obviously tactically there's a lot of probably ways to do that, but as I think back to like being on the flip side of your of your guys' experience, I felt like one of the things that always was like front of mind was the sense of responsibility.
Laura, is being happy and being peaceful, I know it's all the ultimate goal of every human being, but in your formative years, if you instill this thought in kids, you think that's enough, or do we have to have, again, like I said in my earlier question, some strong definitions of how you can define your success, inclusive of happiness and peace and all that?
Yeah, another great question. So I do think if young children are learning that being peaceful and being happy and being passionate about something, like where is the joy stemming from? Where do I come alive? Like even learning to notice that, then that will change things dramatically. Like allowing the space for kids to figure out what makes them happy and noticing and encouraging. And I also think I'm not a parent, so I'm hearing these parents and thinking, wow, and hearing the successful kids of parents, of driven parents, saying they gave me so much freedom, and I'm thinking, yeah, and like, what about on the days they don't want to work hard? What about when they don't want to go to school or they don't want to do their homework? Or like, is it really about freedom? And is it really like, oh no, I'm more peaceful at home and I'm happier here. Just let me stay here and the food is good. Let me stay at home. So again, I'm saying this now as a non-parent and not as a coach. I'm just saying it as like with that question mark of where is the balance? And even with adults, because I work with adults. So noticing where you come alive and what makes you happy and finding peace. And also noticing like what is the bigger questions. What am I contributing to? What impact do I have? Or what are the ripples from my life out into the world and with other people? So I don't know if certainly teaching children about peace and happiness and giving them tools to find that and support to find that is critical. And I don't know if that's enough.
Thank you. As much as making money is an innate desire of all human beings, once you achieve this success, giving back also becomes, an innate desire of yours. So before we sat on the panel, we had some preliminary discussions, and it was very heartening to hear from our two younger friends on the stage. So giving back is, like I said, an integral part. I'll start with Aakash. You are trying to flip that thought and that model of giving back instead of trying to wait until you make your $100 million plus and you reach the age of 65, 75, then you want to give back everything. Can I do it as I'm making my money and moving upwards? So your thoughts on that, since you already are acting on it, and then I'll go to Abrar, and then we'll go to the parents.
Yeah, so for me, that's been something that's been a part of my upbringing. I think my childhood hero was my grandpa, was an electrical engineering professor in India. Post-retirement, he made one of the first online education websites in the world called Web Schooling. And that's when I learned HTML when I was 6, coding that for him. So there was a sense of giving back from early age. And so even through high school, through college, I was the first intern at Khan Academy. And then the question that I asked myself earlier this year, about 6 months ago, was, I don't think you have to wait till you're, 60, 70, or you're Bill Gates or whatever to give back. How can you do it now? And how can I start doing it now and do it along the way and not just like wait for this, mythical one day? And so what I wanted to do was, as a 30-year-old, as an entrepreneur, like majority of my net worth is in my company's equity. And I was like, okay, how can I do good using this? So my first thing was, hey, I have these 20 nonprofits and organizations I like, and I want to give some of my stock away. All these old people on my board started freaking out because random nonprofits are going to have voting rights, and they're going to be on my cap table, and they thought I was crazy. So then I realized, I actually have to learn about this nonprofit world. So I hired a nonprofit attorney for the last 5 months to figure out how to do this. I realized that just giving and trying to do something good is 100 times harder than it should be. After 5 months of legal research, we found the answer. What I'm doing is I'm setting up an irrevocable charitable remainder trust. I'm putting a percentage of my equity into this trust. This trust has beneficiaries, 20, 25 nonprofits that I like. And over the next 20 years, I can add, edit, remove beneficiaries. It only adds one line in my cap table. It does not mess up my voting rights or my board of directors. All these old people on my board can relax. And basically the idea is, in the next 20 years, as there's a liquidity event, the proceeds in that trust are going to go to charity tax-free. And I'm committing that now. And hopefully this will help make my company more successful. Employees, will see something special in this company. Certain kinds of investors, certain kinds of partners, customers will want to, do business with my company instead of a competitor because they're also doing good by supporting my company and giving business to my company. So that's where I started. And then through meeting people like Sal Khan and Hadi Partovi and some friends at JP Morgan and others, it was like, how can we inspire thousands, tens of thousands of founders and business owners globally to do the same thing? So I'm establishing the blueprint. I call it Project Karma. And the next step is, how do we make this easy and frictionless and inspire thousands of founders to give away 5, 10% of their equity so that one day when it's worth a lot, it's already committed and irrevocable and goes to charity tax-free.
Thank you. Thank you, Aakash.
It's almost like a venture fund for charity.
On a very lighter note, I was just sharing with Aakash that the very crude form of this particular blueprint of yours was already existing since ages in India. That was what I was telling you. By giving the example of, say, for example, Sai Temple, right, in India, that they have a large trust. So there are a lot of companies and lot of people in India, when they start companies, they make Sai as your partner, and they put, some equity locked for that particular entity, trust, whatever. And that kind of a system is existent in India with lot of such temples and trusts for many, many, hundreds of years, I would say.
So I did not know that, but I am familiar with Sai because my previous company
Yeah.
actually designed the temple for Sai in Sacramento.
Yeah.
So I'm familiar
So
with the organization.
Sai Baba is a partner in, maybe, I mean, I can just dig out in Google thousands of companies in India. So that's.
Abrar, go ahead.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of different ways to approach the conversation, and I think from my personal experience of having advised clients to give, and friends and family and myself, I think the largest hindrance is that people, of course, don't feel as if it's enough, right? They see a problem and they're like, hey, this isn't enough to solve the problem. They're going to need like 10 other people to gather in. And at the same time, they don't have an effective way, for example, for them to, or they don't know of ways to, let's say, save up for money, save up money to give to charity, right? And so I think that it's a general lack of awareness of, trust and estate vehicles like the one that you're using, Aakash. There's donor advised funds, there's grant to retained annuity trusts, and so there's a whole host of these things that actually incentivize giving to charity. And they do it from a responsible, like, estate planning perspective, but they also do it from a responsible tax perspective where you end up paying less. So I think that there's a general, like, educational barrier. This information is it's technically it's available to you guys. You can go read the tax code, but it's really hidden behind the paywalls of expensive lawyers that Akash, you had to hire. So it's it's not widely known, and so I think one of the things we can do is like spread the tactical ways in which you can give easily, and that empowers people to do it however they want.
So, yeah, Laura.
And I just want to say also from a very different perspective that giving back also, so the younger generations now, they keep demanding like purpose at work and help me thrive and be happy, maybe be peaceful, I'm not sure, but that is also giving back. Again, it's like what I'm doing, my actions, my choices in life, how are they impacting? And that I think is a very powerful way of quote giving back. It's really just participating and giving.
So we'll take the concluding remarks from Gauri and Nitin then on the similar.
Yeah, and continuing with this thought of like, what is success to me? Like when, during the school days, like when I was a scientist, and as a medical professional, how many patients or how many lives I have touched? That was my definition of success. Then, going forward, being an entrepreneur, like what kind of a legacy I'm leaving behind is, not just, I mean, earning dollars, everybody wants that, but that's not going to last long. What is going to, leave a mark on this, like what kind of a legacy, what kind of a technology or what kind of a solution I'm, my company through me is going to leave, I'm going to leave behind. That legacy is my criteria for my success. And now going forward, how many, like, because I completely believe that life is nothing but like, it's a continuous education, that kind of a journey, that kind of a process. So going forward in the latter part of my life, I think how many lives I try to give some knowledge is going to be my criteria of the success. So I completely like agree with you. Like, that's kind of a giving back in terms of money. And these guys starting it at a very young age. I really, hats off to you guys thinking of that at such a young age and not really thinking, but you have started acting on that with your blueprint. So, from the bottom of my heart, I really congratulate you. And that's real good karma, which you are bringing to your own destiny, own luck. So I'm sure that will fetch you many more benefits. So that's
Thank you.
So Nitin,
Yeah, talking about the giving back and the karma, building on those two themes. I think the financial part of the giving back is where we talked about. But I think to creating that mindset from early upon will lead to that behavior naturally. That's where I spend more time. So for whether it's my daughters or it's other youngsters that I sometimes mentor, developing that mindset that it's not just you don't have to think about what I have to give back, but creating that mindset, whether it's today it's time or it's expertise or your inclination, whether it's taking Salcan's program, and one of my daughter implemented that in Boys and Girls Club of America for underprivileged area. So she took those online education classes and implemented those there, or going in every Thanksgiving and serving in a community kitchen and giving your time there. When you imbibe those kind of behavioral framework from earlier upon, then naturally when that generation becomes financially successful, I think they will think about giving back financially also. So I think what Aakash and the team is doing today, of course, is commendable. But for him, and he realized the power of karma early enough. I think if you define that power of karma before even becoming financially successful, then that natural behavior will come once you have the financial strength also.
thank you. Laura?
Yeah, what a great, inspiring time here together. So I think like there's no question anymore of that what we do impacts, we as humans, that there is an interdependence between humans and the planet, and that how we act. We have choices to make, and we can't pretend that our impact doesn't make a difference, and that it can be very destructive, and it can also be very productive. And so I'm very heartened also by youth and young people really like just knowing that in a way I didn't know at their age. I just wasn't aware that we really can destroy, or we certainly can do a lot of harm to each other and to the planet. I just wasn't as aware as I think young people today are, and there's great power in that. And it's also real, I just think we really are here sharing resources and the planet, and it's just the way things are, that nothing is really mine and nothing is really yours. Even the air in the room, we're all breathing the same air. So the sense of giving back is, I think, really like being the human, just owning our human place.
Thank you. Abrar, your concluding thoughts?
I think I feel like everyone's sense of how they want to impact the world, or how they, in which direction they want to take their leadership efforts, is a function of finding out what you actually care about. And I think that one of the coolest things about the environment we live in, specifically the Bay Area, Northern California, in this day and age, is that the world is really at your feet. So if there's an experience that you want to extend to yourself or to your kids, this is the place to do it. And I think that is kind of opens up the door, like it did for myself, and I think for Aakash as well, to go and then find what you care about and then make that impact. But it kind of starts with the exposure.
And finally, Aakash, your concluding remarks?
Yeah, we talked about karma, like not just my project, but the general concept. And I think for me, in my own life experience, I've seen plenty of examples where it just, forget somebody saying something or reading a book or anything. I've just seen enough situations in my life. If you do good things, you get lucky. That time when you need luck, you get lucky. Something good happens. I've seen enough of that I'm a true believer, which is what led me to ask this question, like, how can I do as much good with what I have now and not just wait? And hopefully that becomes a positive flywheel. So I do really believe in that concept. And I think the more people are aware of that and they learn that early on, the more their life will be aligned with that.
It's been a varied discussion. Difficult to summarize, but I think what we're all taking away from the discussion is don't try to control your kids. Give them the freedom and learn to help them grow in a very positive environment and manage them. And I think the sorry, Laura, I'm again going back to the immigrant successes. I think because we come from a culture where education and success are deeply rooted, because that was the only way out for us. If you don't study hard, don't study well, then you don't succeed. So that has done well for the first generation of immigrants here, and is doing well for this next generation. So it's very gratifying to see. But more importantly, what is even more gratifying is they have adapted so well to the country that they're being raised in or being born and raised in. The assimilation has really, taken a positive effect, and you're sincerely becoming leaders and giving back at the same time. That is the best part of all of that. So it's been a wonderful discussion. Thank you for taking the time on a Saturday evening and coming and sharing your knowledge and your experiences. And all the very best to our young friends here. And thank you for your continued journey and your success. I appreciate that very much.
Thank you.